Daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, why? Whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, why? There's whiskey in the jar. I went to take a slumber. I dreamt of gold and jewels. Oh my God, it was no wonder. And Jenny took my charges and she filled them up with water and called Captain Pepper to be ready for the slaughter. To be ready, to be ready, to be ready, ready, aye, aye. To be ready, to be ready. Whack for the daddy-o, 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 there's whiskey in the jar. And if there's anyone can aid me, it's my brother in the army. If I can find a station as a corker in Killarney, we go out raring through the pubs there in Kilkenny, and I'm sure he'd treat me fairer than my sporting rare and Jenny, rare and Jenny, rare and Jenny, rare and Jenny, Jenny, aye, aye, rare and Jenny, rare and Jenny. Whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, aye. Whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, aye. There's whiskey in the jar. Some take delight in fishing, some take delight in bowling, and some take delight while in those hurley sticks a rolling. I take delight in the juices of the barley and courting pretty fair maids in the morning, very early, very early, very early, very
Welcome, friends, today once again with Sayat for the Cross Culture Concerts. We have today with us Sin Silver, and she is going to finish up the second season of the Cross Culture Concerts. I've been waiting for this one since the whole entire time we kicked off the second season. I want to introduce Sin, to our audience. I'd like you guys to get to know Sin a little bit, and then we'll have a little casual chat with Sin as well. So Sin Silver is actually an Irish singer-songwriter based in the Bay Area. With a unique style, her Irish piano and angelic voice is delighting audiences. And she is a featured artist at the Northern California's Graton Casino Resort. She brings a unique flavor to her craft, whether she's playing her expertly crafted originals, covers with her own twist, or Celtic music. Sin Silver is someone that deserves to be heard live. And it's so true, Sin. Right now we're going to be premiering your performance, but hopefully in the future we'll have a live one as well.
absolutely.
Sin, right? Sin actually came to San Francisco from County Clare in Ireland almost 15 years ago with a dream, enormous amount of talent, and what many would call a fire in the belly to be heard. And since then, she's made a large swath of fans in the Bay Area where she finds herself these days, one song at a time, one fan at a time, says the Oakland Tribune. Amazing, Sin. And I wanted to also mention to our audience that I met Sin, actually, I have to thank Chela, who introduced us, during our Art Abilities Festival back in December. And when I first heard you sing with Chela, I was like, oh my goodness, like we have got us and on Sayat, Sarah. So welcome. Thank you for
Thank
being.
you so much.
How are you doing, Sin, today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm feeling terrific. I just started playing live back in person.
Very nice. That's excellent.
Yes. So that really does feel great.
Oh, that's fabulous. So, Sin, we wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit, sort of understand your journey, both, musically and otherwise. I know, it's like I just mentioned, you've been in the Bay Area for about 15 years. So I've in it, even when I was back in India, and then once I moved to the United States, I've always listened to Celtic music quite a bit, and I've been very intrigued. I just love Celtic music. But how did you get into music? Did you start learning music when you were young back in Ireland? I mean, how did this all start?
Well, my mother was a classical concert pianist.
Ah, nice. Okay.
So we were raised with music in the house.
Wonderful.
And she taught me piano at age 5.
Oh, wow. Very
And that was honestly mostly classically based music. And I was also like just a singer from a young age.
amazing. That's amazing. It's interesting though, because I know, we were talking about this, and you mentioned this during one of our events for the World Culture Day, that traditionally piano is not a Irish instrument. Is that right?
That's right. What we would consider traditional Irish instruments would be more the fiddle, the
Right.
violin, the concertina, the squeeze box, the whistle, the
Oh,
whistle. Even the guitar would be more of a featured instrument in Irish groups rather than the piano.
wow, very interesting. So it's then even more interesting is the fact that your mom was a concert pianist, and she raised you with the piano essentially. So how did that come about? I mean, that in itself to me is cross-cultural.
Yes, it is very much so. And like I said, it was very much the classical journey until I was about 12. For private lessons up to Dublin from Clare every 2 weeks,
Oh wow,
um,
okay.
to a gentleman called Frank Heenahan. He kind of recruited me in Ireland, and it was a
Okay.
fantastic year. And basically, I was practicing then every day for about an hour.
I see.
And after a year, he told me that if I wanted to do this, I would at least have to practice 2+ hours, and I wasn't willing to do that with classical music.
Oh wow, okay, great, okay.
With classical music, and my mom at the time, she was a little bit relieved because classical music can be very lonely.
Oh,
It's amazing and it's beautiful, but the work that you have to put into doing
yeah,
concertos, and it is, you're talking more like 7 to 8 hours a day if you want to get to the top of your game.
wow, okay. So basically, at that point, you made the switch to.
And that just happened to kind of collide with the fact that I was starting to write songs.
I
I
see.
st- I kind I wrote my first song at 12.
Wow, amazing. Okay, okay.
Yeah, and that kind of continued more like more a little bit of the contemporary journey. I was influenced by Tori Amos, like she's a
Ah,
pianist,
right.
singer-songwriter, but always throughout our education in Ireland, we were constantly fed and educated with Irish music, with traditional music. So that was always in my educational base.
Okay.
So even though I wasn't trained traditionally per se, because of singing and because of the education system there, I definitely started to integrate parts of traditional music into my repertoire, into how I wrote as well.
Well, that's very interesting. So, pretty much from the age of 12 up until you moved to the United States, you were sort of building your own repertoire by incorporating traditional Irish music.
Exactly, as well as the contemporary. Like we've said that, in the beginning, the part of the bio says, like, I think it says Irish piano or piano, Irish rock with an Irish heart or something. Do you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
It definitely
Yes.
probably might lean a little more towards contemporary, but the Irish influences is very there. More,
Right.
I didn't even realize it as much, to be honest. It was just something I did until I went to record my first album, and the gentleman that ran the studio, Jeffrey
Yeah.
Wood,
Yeah.
Fantasy Studios in Berkeley, which is unfortunately closed since,
Oh,
said, "I've never heard somebody play the piano like this. This is Irish piano."
very interesting.
Yeah, and then I was like, God, it is.
So, just for the sake of the folks who are tuning in who may not be very familiar with
what is traditional Irish music? And if you don't mind, would it be possible for you to tell us a little bit about what might be considered traditional Irish music? And I mean, say in comparison to say classical music, like what is different? I mean, I've heard Celtic music and I have a feel for how it sounds, but I'm kind of curious to know, is there something that's distinctly different?
Well, traditional Irish music, it definitely it always tells a story, and it goes back so far in history, back to the oral tradition, that it's been passed on through generations, from hearing, from speaking. So it's not necessarily like written, with a classical piece. You have your
Right.
Beethoven like that, very different in Irish music. Also, if you were getting together with a group, they would have these things called a session, and they would have a blueprint of the music, but there's a lot of improvisation that goes on with it, a lot of improvisation as well.
So if you were to, compare to like say, mainstream Celtic music, like people like Enya or, like Lorena McKenna, like what would you say is different from something like that in comparison to traditionally
And
played?
I and I think there's a lot of similarity, to be honest, with that music, with those particular artists. They pull from the traditional roots.
I
They
see.
might bring they might give it a touch like more highbrow with their beautiful high resonant notes and that. But I do think they're pulling from that traditional diaspora, really. So it's very similar. Like, I consider Celtic music traditional music. I
Yeah.
consider that the same genre.
The other interesting thing, and I haven't quite gone back and referred back to a legitimate source, like when I was back in India too, it was always mentioned that there's elements of Celtic music in certain aspects of Indian music and vice versa. Is that really true?
I do believe that is true. I
Okay.
also I also believe that it's very connected to like Persian music too. There's actually roots
Really?
there as well. This would go back a little bit more to what we would call the Shan Nos tradition. This is more of an ancient tradition. Shan Nos are two Irish words from the Irish language, meaning the old way. And in the Shan Nos way of singing, there's a lot of like,
Right. Yeah.
and that's very, to me, right there, that could have been Indian, that could have been Middle Eastern, but harking back to the same ancient place, I definitely hear similarities. It's amazing.
It is amazing and always been very intrigued by that, considering geographically, how far apart the countries are, right? Um,
Exactly, exactly.
so I always found that to be very intriguing and wanted to learn and read a little bit more about how that influence happened across those rather diverse cultures. But another thing I wanted to ask you, Sin, was I know you've had like very diverse influences, like it says in your bio, David Bowie, Elton John, Sinead O'Connor, Jack White, to say, to name a few. So kind of curious to know, when you say they were your influences, was it more from a songwriting standpoint or just musically? Like how did they influence your work?
Excellent question, by the way. Definitely, with regards to David Bowie, definitely a songwriting influence there. And just listening to him when I was younger, more abstract themes, right?
Yes.
That you're
Uh-huh.
not just talking about my boyfriend broke up with me, I'm upset.
Yes, absolutely. I've
There's
heard
nothing
David
wrong with
Bowie
talking about that
growing up.
either.
I
Nothing at
know.
all. But
Yes.
just kind of opening the mind like that a
Right.
little bit more. Jack White, Sinead O'Connor, uh, both amazing singer-songwriters too. But the performance element with them would be influential too, because they put it all out there. They put it all out there. They don't leave anything behind. So when they're performing, they give it to you. It's amazing when you put your heart and soul into a performance. People do, they gravitate towards that rather than just going through the motions.
No, absolutely. I mean, I at least grew up listening to most of these folks that you mentioned, obviously Elton John, David Bowie, and Sinead O'Connor. I think you and I spoke about that in the context of the name, right? You're like, your name's
Absolutely.
Sinead. So,
My name is Sinead, and Sin is literally S-I-N. That's how you spell Sinead in
right,
Irish.
exactly.
People always think it must be S-H-I-N, but
Yeah.
with the Irish language, it's pronounced Sinead. And there's actually a little line on the E
Ah,
in Irish called
right.
the fada, which just makes the E
A,
long.
longer, yeah. No, I mean, I loved listening to Sinead O'Connor's songs as well when I was growing up, and she's intriguing. Like it's so riveting, right? Like you listen to her sing, and you can't stop. You just
No,
have
you
to like
can't.
keep listening.
Absolutely, she draws you in, and she, like I said, I think I said say that in my concert coming up. Love her or hate her, she's very controversial,
Right,
but she always speaks her truth. And she was famous so young. She was
right.
only 18 when she hit and that's really hard. That's hard for anyone.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So, so then once you at some point you moved to the US, right? Like
Yes,
about 15 years ago. And so up until then, you were still, experimenting with your kind of repertoire.
I
And then
was, but I never performed really in
oh,
Ireland. I
really?
did,
Okay.
I
I
did
see.
things here and there.
Okay.
Like I would play I might go into a competition here and there for songwriting, but I didn't really gig per se because I was studying law in Ireland.
Oh, you were? Oh, wow. That's
Yes,
amazing. I didn't
yeah.
know
So
that.
I went to do a BCL, which is a Bachelor's of Common Law in Ireland. And then I went to the United States for a J1 visa, which is a visa that you get just for the summer to work over here. And I
Okay.
fell in love with San Francisco, and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I have to come back to the United States. So I did a master's in music technology, and then I came over after that, and I've been here ever since.
That's amazing. So you pretty much, once you moved here and you finished your master's, it's probably when you started performing, like you started
Exactly.
doing
And
gigs.
I didn't want to do law, to be honest. And I felt if I stayed in Ireland, I would be a lawyer.
Ah, well, they're somewhat disparate fields, right? Like music, law.
Yes,
Although
exactly.
it's pretty incredible. I don't think, I've now met through SciArts or scientists who are musicians, This is the
And
first time
that's your
someone,
background, I believe, too. You're a scientist, aren't you?
right, yes, I'm a scientist, but I've never met someone in law who's, majorly into the arts, which is amazing. I mean, but you're now a full-time performing musician.
I am a full time. This is my job. It has been since I've come over to the United States. It was difficult at first. At
Okay,
first,
I was going to ask you,
I
yeah.
had to get my
Mhm.
P3 visa, which was a music visa,
That's right.
and I got that renewed. And then I had met my husband, and we did get married after a few years, and got my citizenship. Gosh, I've only been a citizen for a couple of years. That was amazing. But it's been stuck with regards to trying to make a living. It was building blocks upon blocks upon blocks about, am I doing the right thing? I started, my first gig was a Tuesday night at Petar's in Lafayette. That was a little bar that's since closed down. But playing on a
Oh,
Tuesday night is tough per se,
oh yeah.
no matter where you are.
I know. Wow. So clearly, you've built it like to, where you are now. And, I've been seeing many of your performances as well on Facebook. I mean, now in the last year and a half with the lockdown. But typically, what's your week like, and or do you choose a time to, write your songs, or is it that inspiration strikes you and then you just choose to write?
It's definitely when inspiration strikes you, but I think it's very important to carve out time to work on songs that might be hitting you, just to flesh things out too. People have this idea, oh, I have to wait till the inspiration hits me,
Right.
perhaps that's very true with getting your idea for your song, but there's nothing wrong with putting a couple of hours behind. I find the voice memo on my phone so handy.
Oh
Like
yeah.
if I'm in the grocery store and something comes in my head, I'll just like sing into my phone.
I know, seriously,
because
you know,
it can strike
technology.
you at any
Right,
time, you know.
right. So would you say that you typically perform on the weekends or, I mean, I'm talking like prior to the pandemic, you know?
Absolutely, it's mostly at the weekends, and I do have my own studio here where I
Yeah, right there.
teach 3 days a week as well, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, wonderful. So do you teach piano and voice as well?
Exactly, I teach piano and voice, and it's interesting because everything's been online for the last year,
Yeah, I
which
know.
was which was a real challenge at first, but now it's turned into a wonderful thing because I can teach people anywhere.
Exactly. I
It's
think, that's the silver lining to the pandemic. I mean, in addition to the fact that, like even for me, when I'm thinking about the series, the cross culture series, and meeting all the different artists from around the world, in a way, I have to thank the lockdown or the pandemic, because it kind of forced me to
exactly.
go out of my, like whatever is a comfort zone, right? Like if it was a live event, we would just feature folks from within the LA area or something. But this kind of made me go out of my comfort zone and reach out to folks all the way, from
Abs-
Japan, wherever, right?
Absolutely. And it can be a beautiful thing. Human beings are very adaptable.
Absolutely. So Sin, it's we cannot wait to watch a performance. It's on Sunday. It would be our grand finale for season 2. But I was wondering, if you might be able to give a little bit of introduction to the kinds of songs you've chosen for your performance. In the spirit of the cross culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the first song that I'm singing is My Lagan Love. And that would be a song now that would be covered by the artists that you love, like Lorena McKennett and Enya. And it's the soaring Irish ballad, obviously talking about the love of a woman, but personifying it too very much by talking about the land. At times it seems like he's talking about the land, about the woman. It's very much intertwined.
Yeah.
It's stunning, stunning ballad. And
Wow.
that's very traditional and it comes from Northern Ireland.
Oh, very nice. Thank you for, keeping that in mind. I know the whole Lorena
Oh, I really enjoy. Honestly,
McKenna.
I really enjoyed doing that. To be honest, because it made me think about it. Like I said previously, I wasn't when I went to the studio to record the album. I wasn't quite aware that I was doing such Celtic piano. But even you saying, "Can you talk about your influences?" You have to think about it a little bit,
Right, right.
and that can be a wonderful thing. And I did one of my own love songs talking about coming to San Francisco. That one is called Jagged. And like I said in my introduction, it doesn't necessarily talk about, it's not like My Lag in Love, but I do talk about the land, the land of haze. On a crazy whim, think I'll fly
Right.
away, cross the Golden Bridge to the land of haze. It's sad. It has minor influences too within it.
No, I think I encourage all our audience that's tuned in today to definitely tune into our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, Sayatsiras on Sunday. This is so unique and it's going to be so different. And what a great way to end our second season.
Thank you so
With
much
a bang.
for doing that. I really appreciate that. And just the other little thing I did want to touch off is that I did include pieces with the Irish language in it
Very
too,
nice. Oh, fabulous.
which I love doing that. First of all, I went to a school in Ireland,
Uh-huh.
Ranjini, that was all Irish. So
Oh,
that
very nice.
so that means that we had to translate French into Irish.
Oh,
Mathematics was all in
wow.
Irish. So we spoke fluent Irish. And the thing about the Irish language is there's ways, and you know this from where you are too. There's ways of expressing things in one language that you cannot
You can't.
in it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's lost in translation essentially. So
Wow, that's amazing.
I
I
really
would
enjoyed
love.
singing on Rev Thu An Garig, which was the song about being at the rock. And it's a very old Shanno song. And there's codes within that song when they sang it back because they were being ruled by the English. If they sang it in a certain way, it means they were going to secretly celebrate Mass. And if
Uh,
they sang it in a different way, they weren't. So amazing what was happening
wow.
within a song. Unbelievable. And on Rev Thu An Garig means were you at the rock?
I
and that has a lot of the Shan No singing that I talked about earlier. I think you really enjoy exploring that element of traditional music, you know.
I think it's fabulous. I cannot wait.
And then the other song that I did with that one, Ranjini, was a song that I wrote for my sister's wedding. It's called When Kerry and Claire Does a Dance, and that has English and Irish in it both.
Oh, wow. Incredible. Thank you for doing that, Sin. I mean, I think you've really put in so much thought into this. I mean, truly bringing out the cross-culture aspect in so many different ways. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
So I was wondering, Sin, if you could maybe tell our audience a little bit about your sort of musical ideology. I know you're in San Francisco now. It's like a melting pot of so many different, musical forms. Is there something you'd like to share with our audience, sort of your point of view?
Well, I think I've talked plenty about my influences, but where I come from as an artist, on the most simple level, is really reaching somebody from your heart to their heart. If you've done that, you've succeeded. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about, is reaching people on the heart level.
Yeah. And I think you're really good at that, Sin, because like I said, when I first talked to Chela back in December, and we had Chela for the event, and I listened to your, performance there. It immediately I've connected with you, and I think you have that.
That's so cool, because that was on the street. That was a cappella.
I loved it.
That was recorded with a phone. They did painted pianos, and it was very raw. So I'm surprised you could even pick up on that. That's really cool.
And, to me, I think the fact that it was raw, that's what kind of, connected to me right away. And, ever since I've been, every time you go live, on the weekends on Facebook, I've been listening to and encourage our audience to follow Sin's page.
Exactly, because we do that live stream every Saturday. We started it during lockdown, 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and it's 9 o'clock Irish time. That's what we say. And we're also doing it on YouTube now as well.
You are, okay.
Because a lot of people are not on Facebook, so having both of those is great. And for right now, we're going to continue, because people they've got a kick out of it. It said they kept them going. That's what it's all about. And
I think it's a great way to connect to everyone, because I know eventually when you go back to live performances, it's great. But then, I think everyone else who can't attend the live performance will miss this. So I think...
Exactly. And also having the connection back to Ireland too. That has been really cool. And bringing America and Ireland together for the stream. Honestly, there's never been a harsh word. It's been a lovely experience.
Oh, absolutely. I think... music definitely brings people together even under these circumstances. And, thankfully we're opening up on this side of the world, and hopefully the rest of the world will also.
Absolutely.
Soon, hopefully, right? But
yes.
Well, thank you so much, Sin, for being a part of this. You've been super supportive, right from the beginning. And, look forward to having you here in LA sometime, or, when I come up there, maybe we could host something live, through your Sayat.
Absolutely. And thank you for everything that you do. It's a pure labor of love, you can just tell. It's part of your soul, like what we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And friends, who tuned in, please, listen to Sin's fabulous performance. It's going to be on Sunday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Look forward to having Sin again in the future as well. Thanks again so much, Sin.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a lovely evening, and see you soon.
Definitely. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.